Empty grocery shelves are making a comeback. And unfortunately, this time, the situation looks worse than anything we've seen in recent years. The latest numbers from global food experts show that over 30% of everyday grocery items are facing serious supply chain disruptions. After spending more than a decade tracking food supply trends, I can tell you the warning signs we're seeing today rival those of 2020, but the stakes might be even higher now. Unforgiving weather has wiped out crops in major growing regions, while labor shortages are leaving food processing facilities struggling to keep up. On top of that, skyrocketing transportation costs, which have surged by 22% in just 3 months, are making it harder than ever to get products to store shelves. In this video, I'll break down the 12 grocery items that experts say are likely to disappear completely before April 1st. And some might shock you. If your household depends on even one of these products, you'll need to act fast. Once they're gone, it could take months to see them back in stores. The 8th item on this list? Truly unexpected, even for someone like me who studies food supply chains for a living. Stick around, because you'll want to be prepared. 1. Blood oranges and specialty citrus. Brace yourself if you're a fan of blood oranges or other specialty citrus fruits. These delicacies are about to vanish from stores altogether. Why? The situation is far uglier than you might think. Blood oranges rely on specific growing conditions to get that deep ruby red hue and sweet berry-like flavor we all love. This year, those conditions got trashed. Reports from Sicily, where the creme de la creme of blood oranges come from, show production down by a jaw-dropping 40%. Warm winters disrupted the pigment development. Translation? You don't get the gorgeous color, you don't get the blood orange. Meanwhile, over in California, things are somehow worse. Southern California, a hub for specialty citrus like blood oranges and caracaras, faced an unexpected frost recently. Farmers are reporting damages that will take years to recover from. Imagine losing nearly half your orchard. That's what happened to many growers. One farmer told me he's lost so many caracara and moro orange trees, he's not even sure if the next few seasons will make up for it. And guess what? Supply issues don't stop there. Importers don't want to bother with expensive specialty citrus. Instead, they're focusing on standard oranges that are easier to ship and more profitable. Major grocery chains have already slashed their orders of specialty citrus by 60%. If you're lucky enough to find blood oranges now, you'd better be willing to fork out around $3.99 a pound, which is already a huge bump from previous years. By mid-March, expect prices to hit ridiculous levels. Here's your game plan. If your recipes call for blood oranges, Meyer lemons, or caracaras, grab them now. Freeze the juice, freeze the zest, do whatever you need to do because you're not seeing them again until next winter. And even then, don't expect things to go back to normal. The prices will stay high and the supply will stay limited. 2. Specialty coffee beans. Say goodbye to affordable, high-quality coffee for your morning brew. Specialty coffee beans are vanishing, and this time, the reasons are piling up faster than you can say triple-shot latte. 2 countries dominate global coffee production: Brazil and Vietnam. Together, they control the vast majority of Arabica and Robusta supplies. And here's the bad news. Both nations are in serious trouble. Brazil, which supplies around a third of the world's Arabica beans, is dealing with its worst drought in over 40 years. Yes, some areas have gotten rain recently, but guess what? It's too late. The lack of moisture over the years has already wreaked havoc, cutting down yields drastically. The 2025-2026 season is expected to post some of the worst harvest numbers in decades. Vietnam, on the other hand, is battling typhoons and completely unreliable rainy seasons. Robusta, the workhorse bean for so many blends, is taking a hit both in quality and quantity. Beans are arriving at ports late, and they're not meeting the standards roasters demand. Then there's the logistical nightmare. Moving coffee right now is a circus act. Ports are clogged, containers are in short supply, and the trucking industry is short by tens of thousands of drivers. Shipping costs have exploded in that cup of coffee you take for granted. It's paying the price. Wholesale specialty beans are already trading at record highs, and retailers are passing those costs right on to you. Industry experts predict price hikes of up to 25% just in 2025. Do the math. That 6-store artisan pour-over might cost you $8 or even $12 by the end of the year. Here's what's even more annoying. Beans coming out of Brazil like Santos or Vietnamese Robusta, the backbone of so many specialty blends, are wreath ones disappearing first. There's no replacing those iconic flavor profiles. You can experiment with alternatives like Ethiopian or Colombian beans, but even those prices are creeping up. The solution? If you're addicted to smooth specialty coffee, consider buying in bulk now. Just store it properly. If you've got a local roaster, this is the time to build a relationship. They might help you find smaller batches of beans you won't get at major retailers. But make no mistake, this shortage isn't a blip. Coffee drinkers are in for a long, bitter ride. 3. Wild-caught salmon. If wild-caught salmon is a regular on your shopping list, here's a tough pill to swallow. Those premium fillets are about to disappear from grocery stores altogether. Fisheries from Alaska to the Pacific Northwest are staring down environmental and regulatory disasters that are choking out the supply of wild salmon. First, the quotas. Fisheries operate under strict guidelines to keep wild stocks healthy enough to reproduce. This year, those limits just got slashed dramatically. Catch rates are being cut by close to a third compared to last year, meaning less salmon on boats and eventually in stores.
Fishermen are unhappy about it, but there's no way around the science.
Stocks are simply on the brink. Ocean temperatures are another ticking time bomb. Key salmon habitats are running 2.5 degrees hotter than normal. To you, that might sound like nothing. But for salmon, it's a disaster. Warmer waters are throwing off migration patterns, making it harder for fishermen to locate fish.
Some are going twice as far out to sea only to come back nearly empty.
It's not sustainable. On top of that, demand for salmon is through the roof. Consumption jumped 15% over the past year, and with supplies dwindling, the price is skyrocketing. Those sockeye and king salmon fillets you've been grilling up? Expect prices to climb by 30-40% in the coming months. Wild salmon will no longer be a staple food. It'll be a straight-up luxury item. Retailers are already shifting priorities. A seafood buyer I spoke to last week made it clear. Most chains are only stocking farm-raised salmon now. It's the only way to keep up with demand. But if you know the difference, you understand farmed salmon doesn't hold a candle to wild. Nutritionally, farm-raised salmon has less omega-3 fatty acids and more exposure to chemicals from crowded farming conditions. What can you do about it? If wild salmon is important to you, stock up and freeze it now. It's going to be the only way to hold on to what's left of this season's catch.
Otherwise, brace yourself.
Those bright, nutrient-rich fillets won't come back until at least early summer. By then, you'll need gold bars to afford them. 4. Almond and oat flour. Bakers and gluten-free eaters, brace yourselves because almond and oat flours are about to become rarer than a snowstorm in July. California, which cranks out more than 80% of the world's almond supply, is facing a brutal combo of weather disasters. First, they suffered through extreme drought, leaving thirsty almond trees gasping for water. Then came record-breaking floods that drowned orchards instead. The result? Production has nosedived 18% compared to last year. Farmers are literally choosing which sections of their groves they have to abandon. That Instagram-perfect almond orchard you imagine? It's now a wasteland. And don't think oat flour's sitting pretty either. Canada grows most of North America's oats, and they're having their own nightmare. This past summer brought extreme heat, scorching oat fields to the ground. Want to know how bad it is?
One third-generation Saskatchewan farmer said he hadn't seen a harvest this poor since the 1980s.
To make matters worse, what oats they did manage to harvest are scrawny and barely usable for milling into flour. That means less product and higher prices. Here's where things get downright frustrating. The demand for these flours is skyrocketing thanks to the gluten-free craze.
Everyone and their neighbor is baking almond flour brownies or experimenting with oat flour pancakes.
Social media's pushing the obsession into overdrive too. TikTok hashtags raving about almond flour now have hundreds of millions of views, and Pinterest searches for recipes just keep climbing. Shocking? Not really, considering these flours are healthier than wheat-based alternatives. Almond flour is loaded with protein and has a lower glycemic index, which keeps your blood sugar in check. But here's the thing. The small organic brands are the first to go. Forget about seeing names like Nutty Mill or Pure Ground anymore. They're pausing production entirely. Even bigger players like Bob's Red Mill are limiting sales. Their website already shows stricter purchase caps per customer, and supply is vanishing fast. If you rely on these flours for health reasons, buy now. Scour small co-ops and health food stores because the big chains will run out first. Alternatives like cassava or sunflower seed flours might be your only safety net, so get creative. Otherwise, good luck finding a decent muffin anytime soon. 5. Prime beef cuts. Meat lovers, listen up. Prime beef cuts are disappearing so quickly it's starting to feel more like a heist than a shortage. Go ahead, cruise by the butcher counter at your local grocery store. Notice how sparse it looks? That's not an accident. Cattle inventory in the U.S. has plummeted to the lowest levels we've seen since 1951. You heard that right. We're talking about a 70-year low in cattle numbers, and there's no quick fix in sight. Here's the breakdown. Ranchers are in a chokehold. Feed costs have skyrocketed 31% from last year, with corn prices hitting over $6.40 a bushel. What does that mean for farmers? Many are choosing to downsize their herds because they can't afford to keep feeding them. Small cattle operations are being hit the hardest, with some ranchers reporting reductions of up to 50% in their herds. Even the big guys are feeling it. Feedlots are emptier than anyone wants to admit. Meanwhile, processing facilities are crumbling under labor shortages. I talked to a manager out in Nebraska who said they're running at 76% capacity, which is dismal. They're even offering crazy signing bonuses to attract workers, but it's not enough. If you think that's bad, here's what's worse. Ribeyes, filet mignons, and New York strips, the elite cuts everyone wants, are what's vanishing first. Those premium cuts might only make up about 8% of a cow, but they represent 40% of the profit. Now stores can hardly get them in stock, and when they do, they're enforcing purchase limits. Prices have already spiked into absurd territory. Ribeyes have jumped from $17.99 to $26.99 per pound since January, and that's before this mess really kicks in. If you've got a fancy dinner or holiday meal planned, your time to buy steak is pretty much now. Stock up and freeze it, because by April, even low-quality options might cost an arm and a leg. The bottom line? Prepare yourself for a future filled with ground beef and disappointment.
6. Imported cheeses.
Calling all cheese lovers, this one's going to hurt. Imported cheeses are vanishing, and it's not just short-term. Specialty cheese counters across the country are looking pitiful, with empty shelves and temporarily unavailable signs popping up everywhere. From Brie to Gouda, the luxury cheeses you love are on the chopping block. And frankly, it's a disaster. The cracks in the system are everywhere. Shipping times between Europe and North America have doubled since December. What used to take 12 days now takes over 24, which might not seem bad for canned goods. But for delicate, limited shelf-life cheeses like Camembert or Burrata, it's a deal-breaker. By the time they get here, they're practically inedible. I spoke with an importer who said they recently had to discard 30% of a shipment because the cheeses couldn't pass quality inspections. 30%! Then there's the problem of milk production overseas. France, Italy, and Spain are seeing milk yields drop by 9%. The cause? Rotten weather. Extreme changes in temperature have ruined cattle feed. And don't count on the artisanal cheesemakers to pick up the slack. Family-owned operations in places like Normandy and Lombardy are prioritizing their local markets instead of exporting cheese to North America. They don't trust the shipping conditions, and who can blame them? Temperature control is a huge fail right now. Specialty cheeses require careful handling to keep their texture and flavor intact. But shippers are stretched way too thin to uphold standards. One distributor told me they're seeing wild temperature swings during transit. Guess what happens when cheeses like Brie are exposed to heat? They go from creamy and perfect to slimy garbage. The first to go? Soft cheeses like Burrata, Brie, and Camembert. True Parmigiano Reggiano's becoming rare too, and if you do find it, prepare to shell out. Retailers have already upped prices by $7 per pound in the past 6 weeks. Some stores are limiting purchases to 1 wedge per customer. Bottom line? Plan ahead. Buy bulk, freeze what you can, and savor every bite as if it's your last, because it very well might be for a while. 7. Extra virgin olive oil. If extra virgin olive oil is a staple in your kitchen, prepare for disappointment. The premium, high-quality bottles sourced from Mediterranean powerhouses like Spain, Italy, and Greece, they're about to vanish faster than a drizzle on fresh bread. Here's the hard truth. Olive oil prices have surged to their highest levels in 26 years, with costs jumping an insane 85% compared to last year. Why? Because the Mediterranean region, which dominates olive oil production, is caught in a weather spiral it may never fully recover from. Spain, responsible for nearly half the world's olive oil, just went through its worst drought in 2 centuries. You heard that right. A 200-year nightmare has caused Spanish olive farmers to see their crops drop by a jaw-dropping 60%. Italy? They're drowning in similar misery, with production down by nearly 40%. Greece isn't far behind, and the combined devastation is creating a ripple effect across the globe. Retailers are already scrambling. Any grocery store worth its salt is limiting customers to 2 bottles of olive oil per purchase. Why? Because those top-tier varieties with their smooth, peppery notes are drying up in the supply chain. Forget premium quality. Even mid-tier oils are becoming harder to source. The cheaper generic blends derived from multiple producers will hang around a little longer, but even those are on a ticking clock. Want some good news? Don't hold your breath. Olive trees don't just bounce back from severe weather stress. They take years to recover. Years. And as climate conditions grow worse, the long-term outlook for olive oil isn't exactly promising. Here's my advice. If you see the good stuff on shelves now, grab a couple of bottles, as in immediately. Trust me, you'll thank yourself when the prices skyrocket, or worse, when those shelves sit empty. By April, your kitchen might have to rely on lesser-grade oils, or you'll be cutting your recipes down to one sad tablespoon at a time because premium olive oil will be as luxurious as gold. 8. Premium chocolate.
Chocolate lovers, it's time to panic.
Premium chocolate as we know it is disappearing right before our eyes, and here's why. The world's cocoa supply is going through a catastrophic meltdown, and it's about to rock your favorite indulgence. Cocoa prices have smashed through all-time highs, hitting over $8,000 per ton. That's double last year's price. This isn't just your standard price hike, it's an outright crisis. West Africa, the region that churns out more than 70% of the world's cocoa, is under siege. Floods and relentless rainstorms in Ivory Coast destroyed almost 1/4 of its cocoa crop. Ghana isn't faring any better. Farmers there are fighting an aggressive fungal disease that's wiping out huge swaths of cocoa plantations. Want to know what happens next? Premium single-origin chocolate bars, the kind you treat yourself to on special occasions, are vanishing from stores. Valrhona, Amadei, even those fancy gold-foiled Easter eggs you stockpile this time of year, kiss them goodbye. But wait, it gets worse. Easter, the biggest chocolate season of the year, is looming, and manufacturers are scrambling. Many brands don't have enough cocoa to keep up. A source in the chocolate industry spilled the beans, pun intended, and told me major companies are quietly slashing their Easter product lines by up to 40%. Fewer options, smaller supplies, and soaring prices are now the name of the game. And trust me, you'll feel it. Prices have already jumped 35% at my local store, where the usual 5 shelves of Easter chocolate have shrunk down to just 2. Here's the deal. If premium chocolate is your go-to treat, now's the time to act.
Stock up while you still can, because by mid-March, these products will be either wiped out from shelves or priced so outrageously high, they'll feel more like a financial mistake than a guilty pleasure.
Meanwhile, those left empty-handed will be stuck with substandard alternatives or bland, waxy bars that no amount of nostalgia can redeem. Whatever you do, don't wait. This shortage is real, and it's coming fast. 9. Jasmine and basmati rice. Rice lovers, I hope you stocked up already because jasmine and basmati rice are vanishing quicker than steam off a hot pot. These aromatic grains, treasured by millions for their fragrant flavors, are caught in a bottleneck no one's prepared for. Think it's just a minor blip? Think again. Jasmine rice, primarily grown in Thailand and Cambodia, and basmati rice, cultivated in India and Pakistan, are being hammered by the dual forces of climate chaos and export restrictions. India stirred the pot too hard back in 2023. The country banned exports of non-basmati white rice to stabilize its domestic market, creating a ripple effect that sent jasmine and basmati prices through the roof. What followed was predictable. People worldwide panic-bought these premium varieties in bulk, clearing out shelves, and prices soared as demand massively outweighed supply. Spoiler alert, that panic hasn't gone away. By late 2024, India relaxed those export restrictions slightly, but it was too little, too late. Though duties on parboiled rice were reduced, consumers didn't see much of a break as prices remained inflated. Fast forward to 2025, and while India is slowly reopening the rice floodgates, it's not enough to undo the chaos. Global competition is fiercer than ever, and neighboring exporters like Pakistan, who thrived when India shut its doors, are now struggling to keep up. Supply chains are balancing on a razor's edge, and guess what happens when the slightest hiccup strikes? Yep, the shelf stock of jasmine and basmati disappears overnight. Here's why this is so frustrating. When supply tightens, people go straight for the good stuff, which explains why jasmine and basmati are the first to go. With their iconic textures, rich aromas, and deep cultural significance, they're irreplaceable for millions of households. The result? Empty shelves and sticker shock prices that are inching closer to luxury status. If rice bowls, curries, or fragrant pilafs are regulars at your dinner table, don't wait. Snag your favorite brand now, or you'll find yourself either overpaying outrageously or trying to make do with bland, lower-quality substitutes. And trust me, there's no way that ends well. 10. Fresh strawberries and raspberries. If you love fresh strawberries and raspberries, get ready for a reality check because they're about to become a rare luxury. Here's the deal. Between destructive weather patterns and farming challenges, these berries are fading fast from store shelves. First off, unstable weather has thrown berry-growing regions into chaos. Take places like Arkansas, where the 2024 season saw an early harvest thanks to an unusually warm spring. That might sound good, but the aftermath was disastrous. Dry planting conditions in the fall, paired with a nasty outbreak of diseases like Neopestalotiopsis, have taken a wrecking ball to the 2025 strawberry crop. Some farmers have even opted out of planting entirely this year. It's not just isolated to one area either. Over in Charleston, cold rains in December and January devastated fields, causing root rot and poor plant growth early in the season. A few surviving plants are showing some promise, but don't get your hopes up. Reduced yields mean prices are already creeping upward, and widespread shortages are inevitable. Even Australia, another big berry source, has reported price hikes due to similar seasonal woes. What's really frustrating is how little wiggle room we have for alternatives. Unlike other crops, strawberries and raspberries are incredibly sensitive to weather and disease. You can't just conjure up a good crop when Mother Nature decides to throw a tantrum. You'll see the effects in your grocery bill. Fresh berries have already jumped nearly 25%, with forecasts showing they'll only get higher as April approaches. Here's a tip if you're a berry fanatic. When you can find them, buy in bulk and freeze them. Fresh berries freeze beautifully and can last months if stored correctly. Or if you're in love with jam, now's the time to whip up a batch. If you can adjust your cravings, consider stocking up on apples or pears, which make a decent seasonal fruit alternative. But one thing's for sure, fresh berries are about to cost you way more than they should, if you're lucky enough to find them at all. 11. Maple syrup. Maple syrup. The real stuff is pure magic. But here's the bad news. It's on the verge of becoming nearly impossible to find. Right now, we're staring down a colossal shortage, and the reasons are as frustrating as they are unavoidable. Vermont and Quebec, which together churn out over 80% of the world's maple syrup, have had their production season seriously derailed. Maple syrup production hinges on perfect weather conditions, specifically a freeze-thaw cycle in late winter. This year, that cycle barely happened. Wild temperature swings meant freezing nights didn't stick around long enough, and warming days either came too soon or didn't show up at all. Some producers were forced to start tapping as early as January because of a random warm burst, only for everything to grind to a halt when temperatures plunged again. The result? Maple sap flow is down 30% compared to last year, putting major pressure on supplies. And when sap flow drops, the labor-intensive production process becomes even harder. Do you know it takes about 40 gallons of maple sap to make just 1 gallon of syrup? Well, this year, some producers are reporting they need closer to 50 gallons due to lower sugar content in the sap. Meanwhile, the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers just tapped into their emergency reserves for the first time in years. Yes, strategic maple syrup reserves are a thing. And when they're being released, you know the industry is in trouble. Prices have already jumped 18%, and by April, they're expected to spike another 25%. The smaller family-run producers are hit the hardest, with many leaving trees untapped due to labor shortages. Even regional distribution limits are being implemented in some markets already. Here's the takeaway. If real maple syrup is a staple for your breakfasts or baking, grab a few extra bottles now while you still can. Properly sealed, maple syrup stores for years without refrigeration, so you don't need to worry about it going bad. But don't wait. By the time you hit the shelves next month, you might find nothing but sticky imposter syrups designed to taste like the real deal but with none of the genuine flavor. 12. Canned pumpkin. Canned pumpkin might not seem like an everyday essential, but for people who rely on it for healthy recipes, pet diets, or year-round baking, the coming shortage is a huge headache. Here's the deal. Pumpkin isn't just a seasonal product anymore. Demand has skyrocketed even outside the fall months, and now we're running out faster than you can say pumpkin spice. Illinois, the pumpkin capital of the world, grows over 80% of America's processing pumpkins, and last year's harvest was downright abysmal. Rain was 40% below normal levels during critical growing months, leaving fields dry and yields down by nearly 33%. Farmers are feeling the pain, and so is the market. Libby's, which pretty much dominates the canned pumpkin industry, already admitted they're struggling to meet demand. They used up all their reserve stock months ago, which means there's nothing left to bridge the gap until the next harvest in late 2025.
Here's where it really starts to hurt.
Normally, pumpkin shortages hit around August or September as we approach harvest season. But this year's supply issues have thrown everything off balance. Prices have surged almost 30% since January, with some stores outright limiting how many cans you can buy to stretch their inventory. If you wait too long, you'll be staring at empty shelves by April. Need canned pumpkin for smoothies, pies, or your pup's digestive health? Act now! And if you're up for a little kitchen experimenting, stock up on butternut squash puree. It's nearly identical in texture and flavor to pumpkin in most recipes, and chances are it'll be easier to find as the season progresses. Either way, don't assume that cases of canned pumpkin will be readily available later this year. By the time the next harvest rolls around, you'll wish you had acted sooner. Trust me, this isn't just a seasonal hiccup. It's a full-blown scarcity. Stocking up on these essential grocery items now could save you from frustration later. With supply chain challenges and seasonal demand affecting availability, it's always better to plan ahead. By being proactive, you'll ensure your pantry is well prepared no matter what shortages arise. Don't wait until it's too late. Shop smart.